Welcome back. I have Franklin Kujo here, and I have Kofi Benzel here with me as well. Gentlemen, you're welcome.
Thank you, Sydney.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, this is going to be a difference because for the first time I'm actually hosting a program, and the two of you are my guests. This has never happened before. So, here's what I want us to try and do. There are several issues we are all passionate about. There are several things that kind of gnaw away at us on a day-to-day basis, and we try and comment every day as we go through. Today, I would like to turn the table a little. I would like us to engage ourselves in a conversation of things that we would do if we had the authority to do so, and how we would turn things around without necessarily looking at what exists and whether they are being done the right way or not. So this is a conversation about progress and vision. And I have deliberately stolen the term of a better Ghana, but without an agenda. So let me start with you, Franklin. Here's my take on the economy. We don't have enough revenue and income, and we still need a lot more expenditure to be incurred. So we are caught in the middle of shrinking revenues and continuing increasing expenditures. What should we do?
Well, you started off by asking a very important question as to whether essentially what we would have wished was the situation. In answering the question, I would suggest that if I were in the straddle, essentially if I were in charge, I was going to run a very lean administration.
A lean
to
administration.
Start off with. I think that I can make do with 20 ministers.
Okay.
Both ministers, substantive ministers as well as their deputies, collapse a number of ministries. I wouldn't wish, for instance, the existence of the Ministry of Information.
Okay.
I would think that I effectively deepen decentralization. You know, I wouldn't be lording it over everybody else by appointing DCs from Accra. I would ensure that decision making is strictly essentially from the grounds up, which means that I wouldn't have to employ teachers, doctors, indeed all public sector agents from Accra. That way I lessen the bill. And then I give real power to the people.
Okay, so that's on the expenses side. That's on the expenditure side.
Exactly.
So basically, you have ideas of how you're going to be able to trim the expenses to make it more manageable. We are currently running expenditure budgeted according to about 30 billion cedis. How much more do you think you can shave off?
Well, seriously, I mean, if I did all the things I'm saying I would have done, I probably would shave off a lot more than 30. Because clearly speaking, I mean, you see, you asked a very hypothetical question, and I'm trying to answer you, because you did say that you don't want us to repeat the accusations and the criticisms. So in an ideal situation, as a libertarian, I truly think, it's not even ideology, I mean, having seen the waste in the system, I think I can make do with probably 40 billion more, really, and than is expected. The big one is on education. I'm sure Kofi will tell you the work we've been doing at the money on education, and we think that, look, if we decide that public sector funds were even chasing pupils, combined with local management, community-led management, we shouldn't really be spending the amount of money we are spending on education. So for me, it's about sensible governance, not to continuously pile up people at the center, from the center, and then essentially make sure that the people begin to feel the issues of governance and take charge of their lives.
Okay, so there are certain cost-cutting measures that you think you would do. One of them, you think a leaner, smaller government is manageable. Some sector ministries you think we will have to do away with because you don't see the reason why we should carry on doing such things, presumably because there are other avenues in which we'll be able to use those ministries, or the jobs of those ministries can be done by other overlapping ministries or in a different way.
Essentially, yes. I mean, even if some of them would have to exist, they will essentially become mere agencies,
right?
But not come with all the
ministerial portfolio,
the portfolio,
and the baggage
and
of all the people that we have.
It's just
okay.
Overwhelming.
All right.
Okay. And as I've been saying, I think if you truly decentralize, and education is one of the biggest sector that takes a lot of the money.
Yes.
I mean, if you thought that community's involvement was the way to go, you wouldn't even need a GES trying to supervise everything from the center, paying people who do not even show up.
Right. Okay. So essentially, you will also look at trimming some of those regulatory, institutional positions that we probably can do away with.
Oh,
okay.
Yes.
All right. Whilst we are on that, and seeing as we are talking expenses in education, Kofi, let me ask you this. What specifically can you recommend or do you think should be done? Because the salaries and allowance portion of the of education is costing us about 4.5 billion cedis. That alone, if we are able to move that around somewhat, certainly is going to go towards being able to save some money.
Right. Specifically, I like to take it from the principles. Okay. So clearly, about 25%, easily 25% of the government civil service is not earning a salary.
Okay.
Okay, so we can do with 25% out immediately. Now, the other principle too is that for over a number of decades, we have essentially been running a welfare state disguised as a civil and public service. Okay. What I mean is that we have people who we have consciously employed who are not doing any work, but we don't want them to be unemployed. For that reason, we pay them not to do anything.
Okay.
Okay. Now, so if we take the view that we can do something about productivity and cutting the cost, then we will be, prepared to let these people find other forms of employment. And that brings me to what specifically I will do if I were in charge. I would outsource up to 50%, okay, of the public and civil services. Outsource it straight away, like in the first week.
Okay.
Now, that will be possible, because, like I said, 25% of them really are not working. The other 25 who are working, their jobs can be done more effectively. Now, if you take some of the Ministry of Information will go, for instance, I mean, nothing will happen if we did not have a Ministry of Information. If you have a system where you are in a crunch for cash, you ask yourself, should I really do this? And the other principle you have to apply is everything that you do must produce more than you put in.
Okay.
And one of the ways in management science, one of the questions we ask is what will happen if we didn't do this? So the Ministry of Information can go, there will be no problem there. If you take the Ministry of Health, for instance, okay, it will take some time to do this, but it's doable. You devolve the hospitals. I believe that Kolebu can charge affordable fees and have a graded charging system. Something charged for poor people, something charged for intermediate people, and something charged for high-end people.
Okay.
And it can run better than it is running now on government subvention. Pay doctors like they are paid elsewhere. Everybody's on contract. And so the ministry doesn't have to take charge of them. So I can have the Ministry of Health.
Okay.
I believe the same thing can happen with education. We can give the schools back to the missions because they want the schools back. And we can have a system where the communities actually manage the schools. The schools can actually fire their teachers and administrators. And the money can be raised at that local level. And the government can only support or will only support. And don't think I'm saying these things just anyhow because we've looked at them very closely. There are a number of ministries that, if you take Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, okay, I can have it immediately. You know what I would do? I would have the economic planning side put together with NDPC.
Okay.
And they will become the government strategic thinking arm to think through long, medium, short-term plans. And then I have the government, Office of the Exchequer, which will be doing budgeting and budget monitoring.
Okay.
All right. And I'm not going to have people running around. The Ministry of Finance should not be doing economic planning. And there are too many gray area things going on there, and we've lost our way. So clearly, I think that we will be able to reduce the head count, okay, just in the government systems because there's a lot of waste we all know. If you take the payroll system where I believe the fraud or the problems are actually due to people's plans, It is not a mistake that we can't do it. This is somebody's plan working well. I would draw a line, and the line would be a 12-month existential deadline. That says that if you do not fix all the problems, the government payroll handles under 600,000 people. We spent over $100 million trying to manage that payroll in the past 10 years.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. 4 accounting firms can handle this job.
Okay.
So if you don't fix it, I would outsource the whole thing. I'm not saying this because we just want to sack people or anything, but I'm saying you are in a crunch. You need to save money. I actually don't believe...
Are we suggesting this because we are in a crunch or because it's the best thing to do?
It is the best thing to do, but more so when you're in a crunch. Okay, so some of us have said that these things should have been done anyway. But in the situation where you actually are in a crunch, it's not optional. All right?
Okay.
It's not optional because otherwise somebody will say, well, why are you going to lay people off? Why are you going to do this? The point is this, nobody will be laid off. If I outsourced half of a ministry to you, Sydney, I would require that you hire everybody.
It will be a mandatory requirement.
It will be a mandatory requirement for the first 3 months, 6 months, 1 year.
Okay.
And after that, I will require you to deliver the productivity levels I want. Okay, but leave you to keep your head count. So, for instance,
Frankly, isn't he asking us to actually acquire in the private sector inefficient public sector workers or perceived inefficient public sector workers?
So let me explain before you get that conclusion.
Okay.
Let me explain. Take passport office. If I outsource 60% of passport office, which is a document processing unit that issues an ID card, I would require the outsourcing company to hire everybody. But I'll require them also to produce maybe their results in a week. After a year, I will leave you to determine the number of people you need to produce that in a week.
The same volume of
in a
processing.
Week. So in the early stages, you can say, I am asking you, okay, to take on unproductive people.
Right.
But that's the price you have to pay so that I can at least have a graded system. And then it will be left to the people to work hard to justify their, inclusion in your
Some
outfits.
radical ideas here, frankly, but isn't he asking us, like I said, to take on inefficient workers? And at the same time also, most people complain that private sector, once they take over anything, then the prices go up, and then you've got security issues to worry about. How do we ensure that government confidentiality is preserved? Well, I'll come to you because I think, frankly, must have some opinion on this one as well.
Oh, well, I do, but to a large extent, I agree with Kofi, by the way. I think he made the point about the immediacy of the private sector contractor, if you like, taking on the personnel to start with as a way of assuaging, some of the complaints that will come off naturally. I would think that when men and machines are just opposed, obviously machines seems to be doing something quite better, especially in this part of our world. And it also leads to the fact that people will start essentially complaining that, look, this is not the way to go, it's all a ploy. Even before the whole private sector conversation was even had.
Right.
People wouldn't believe that after 3 months they'll still have jobs anyway.
Sure.
So for me, I think what machines can do, what technology can do, we should just go for it, really. I mean, the issues about payroll, it's a misnomer to think that human beings will be given the task of ensuring a head count. It's just not, I don't see how that makes sense at all.
Right.
You recall during the Senchi conversations, I think it was the vice president who brought that leaflet of an IT firm that supposedly was interested in managing the payroll. An IT firm which is respected, by the way. I've been wondering why all this while it has not been doing that. I think it's been actually been given some of the job to do some of the payroll stuff in this country. But to buttress the point Kofi makes about the fact that 25% of, I don't think I got him quite right, but essentially saying that to start off with, 25% of people that are not supposed to be there.
Okay.
But what you should know, really,
let's hold on there. We need to go for a short break. When we come back, we'll pick it up from the 25%, the 50% expenditure that we can save, and all the outsourcing that we can do. And then we want to talk about the revenue side, because so far we're talking about how we can cost. So a short break and we'll be back. Okay, welcome back. We were at the point where we were talking about how we would trim some cost off. We have spoken about how we can trim something off education. We have talked about how we can generally reduce the size of the ministries and generally do away with some of the ministries. We're trying to nail some issues down so we can put some hard numbers to it. See if we can actually get a sense of how much we would actually be able to put forward to be able to not even maybe balance the budget, but at least to narrow the budget gaps so we can free some space up for infrastructure, which is another topic which we want to talk about. So, frankly, you were in and you were talking about the 25% issue,
yes,
and we're trying to make some sense out of this.
The point Kofi was making was that, I mean, clearly speaking, if you look at what we have in the public service right now, 25% is essentially dead wood.
Dead
right?
wood,
That's
okay.
the point. I was going to buttress the point further to say that during my time at the committee to tame the escalating wage bill, we found out that almost 70% of public sector workers were classified as either unskilled or
semi-skilled.
Now, that's serious. So, that's not to say that we didn't require the services of semi-skilled people, but to have people that were unskilled on the payroll is actually telling. And so for us,
so that's the welfare system I'm talking about.
Right.
Keep people
so
on
we
the
are
payroll
just
just for the sake of it.
on the payroll. And when Kofi talks about the passport office, it's very interesting. See, it's like a ritual now. Almost every year, or every now and then, you do have some entity collecting data. Biometric data. I've even lost count. The passport office, CID will be collecting. SNIT is collecting. I don't even understand why SNIT should be collecting biometric data. I seriously don't know because they're wasting money. The NIA seems to have lost that data they collected. They want to start a new process. The EC by far seems to be the most, if you like, credible record holder of data
of ID.
Of IDs right now. We could have run with it. And in fact, if we had done that, we would have been saving close to 400 million Ghana cedis if we had a unified...
all the databases.
Exactly.
Just have a national ID.
Exactly. You know what that could have done? That essentially could have helped us take over about 20,000 or more schools that are under trees.
You mean with the 400 or 500 million?
Exactly.
You could have eliminated
Probably
most
more,
of those trees. Okay.
So there's a lot that ought to be done. And I don't understand why we have decentralized offices for the Ghana Passport Office, collecting biometric data. And we still have these challenges of people queuing for passports.
Right. But let me refocus you, because what I'm trying to say here is your strategy would be let's try and at least sort of streamline all of these things, have one national ID instead of having several national IDs. And
it's an example of how we can easily cut waste.
Good.
Okay, so we teamed up with DI a couple of years ago to put this forcefully forward, and that led to the biometrics. We are very sure, based on work we have done, okay, that we can have one national ID that can do all this.
All this.
It shows you where we can cut. And in this particular case, it will actually save you money.
Right.
All right. Now, we keep using passport office, but take that example as an example of the bigger civil public services. They should be doing, in my view, 10 times what they are doing now.
Okay.
So let's say if they are producing 10 units of output, okay, a month, they should be producing 100 units of output a month. What do I mean? What I mean is that the 10 units of output is the reason why your passport takes 5 months to come.
Okay.
Is the reason why you have to go and pay a bribe. Now, if they were producing 100 units of output, then just like we all know elsewhere, you can actually apply for a passport in the post or go online and do something, and it will come back within the month.
But surely you're not suggesting that you're going to outsource the passport services division.
Listen, you see, all these sacred cows that we create and behave as if they are not touchable, what is there about...
No, because you're using people's personal data and personal information.
Again, Sydney, let me finish.
Whether or not
we
you
had
want
this
to go
argument when MTN was coming into this country, Spacephone then. There were people who believed we should never allow foreign entities to manage phone systems in this country. And I remember they were saying they are going to listen to our calls, our presidents will be talking about it, they are going to record us and all that thing, that stuff. What has happened? All right, we have this great fear. There is nothing so secret in Ghana that anybody can get.
Except Suba is listening.
Well, please. So let's get back on. So the point we are making is that, you see, we can actually save money in so many different places if we just thought about being a bit more efficient and forcing that efficiency. And it will not lead to people going home because we actually need to increase productivity in the civil and public services. Okay, so we need actually more people, but not 70% unskilled labor who are on the payroll, drawing a salary, single spine, okay, and really not earning. Let me make this point. Technically in economics, the amount of money you earn is not lost to the one who pays you. If I pay you 5 cedis, I'm making 25 cedis off you. So single spine itself being a burden on the state is wrong. Because if we are paying 100 cedis in single spine, we should be making 400 cedis out of them. Okay. And we don't have the time to go through it, but we are absolutely sure that that can be achieved. I don't think we are making too little revenue. I don't think so. I don't think so. The problem is revenue always goes with expenditure. If you are spending way more than you need to spend, okay, then you say we are making too little revenue. What should be the optimal tax, okay, for this government to run efficiently? Frankly says you can do it with 20 ministers. I absolutely agree. Okay, so should our government be spending that much money doing what? What is running well
how
right
much
now?
revenue do we need? To do what you would want to do, how much revenue would you try to generate?
Well, as I've said, if a ministry is costing me about 140 million Ghana cedis a year, multiply that by 20, you are looking at almost, I'll say, close to about 40 billion. I wouldn't think that it would be difficult to achieve that. Look, if you look at the 2014 budget, the budget was wrongly titled, and I say wrongly titled as aligning key sectors of the economy to the vision of a better Ghana agenda. But if you look carefully at the allocations, the Ministry of Transport got 80 million, the Ministry of Information got 100 million, right? That's one. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for doing less work this year, was actually getting $25 million Ghana cedis more, actually 40 million Ghana cedis more, for erecting 4 passport offices and then possibly certain expenditure patterns.
Okay, so you wouldn't bother to try and do any alignments, or you would try and ensure that there is adequate alignment in all sectors.
There's adequate alignment. I mean, we are not saying. See, we shouldn't be presented as if we are here in a very capitalist, if you like, railroaded capitalism. That's not what we are talking about. Essentially, what we are saying that if a budget cuts back 60 million cedis from the Ministry of Health and then tries to splurge on certain ministries whose the previous year's work did not merit an increase, then it tells you that, as Kofi is saying, the problem is not the issue about loss of revenue. There's adequate revenue to go around. It is the fact that the center wants to be this big daddy and then tries to employ everybody. And sometimes employ people on the blunt side. Because, look, there's supposed to be public sector, there's supposed to be a freeze. But day in, day out, people are recruited on the blunt side of the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, because the controller pays. Now, those kinds of rationalization ought to be done. I don't see. There's something we talk at Imani about policy coherence and policy logicality. To the extent that the controller is the one who pays people finally, when even Minister Satekpe doesn't have a clue as to whoever is on the payroll, it's funny. When at the same time, the president will say, there's a freeze.
Right.
Nobody should employ people. You see, what is accounting for those unskilled people being added to the payroll is what happens when words go without action.
Okay, good. And you've kind of dovetailed me into decentralization and whether we should decentralize. I'm assuming that you all agree that we must decentralize and decentralize properly.
We have to see. My DC, when he was elected, well, not elected, appointed not long ago, 6 months down the line was putting out a mansion. When he was asked where he got the money, he said, I won the lottery. Now, these are people you can't hold responsible because it's just...
But you didn't see a lottery ticket?
Well, we never would have seen one. But the point we are making is that, look, you recall when Lower Menyakrobo declared that they were seceding and that they didn't want the person who was imposed on them. Certain pockets of this country have shown a bit of teeth when they argue that, look, services are not coming. Those, it's a time bomb really that we are sitting on. If we keep on living the lie, and we can micromanage everything from the center, we would have real problems on our hands. You know, when I hear these issues about people taking authority from the center, it reminds me of what happened in northern Nigeria, in the federal state, where the state, I've forgotten the name of the state where the girls were actually abducted.
It's Chibok, one of the
federal government knew, there was information that these guys were going to attack the village. But they said they had to wait for orders from federal because this had to do with defense and all of that. Yes. I mean, to think that in this country, before a DC is beholden of the president in almost every aspect of our lives.
Okay. All right. Good. We'll come back to it. We're due for another commercial break. When we come back, Kofi, I want you to talk about whether we need regional ministers or not. What purpose does a regional minister serve? Because this adds to your view that we could trim some of these portfolios and save a lot of money. We'll be back. Welcome back. We are still trying to figure out how we would trim some of the fat off from where we are and do away with some waste. Kofi, I asked you a question just before the break, and I'm saying, why do I need to have regional ministers? Why can't I work with my mayors? Why can't I work with my district and municipal chief executives? Surely that's where the groundswell is, and that's the pinnacle of discussion. I can't see the role of a regional minister. What do you think?
My view of that is that if we will elect our DCs, the district chief executives, it will give real authority to them at that level to prosecute their agenda. Okay? And it will make the regional ministers less necessary. But I would not take them away. I would keep the regional ministers as the president's coordinators at the regional level and give them a very small staff. What I mean is this: the regional ministries as they are today, too large, too wasteful. And I think ultimately we are not getting value for money. And if you have a district situation where the president is appointing, I think that is where you see the duplication or the waste coming in.
But the Constitutional Review Commission is recommending that we elect our district chief executives, our municipal chief executives, and our mayors. If we did that, do we still need to appoint a regional minister over and on top of them?
So now I'm saying, if we did that, it will not be necessary to have a regional minister to become a conduit for development. Somebody who breaks the bulk, from the president into the regional, districts. Because these people are elected, they have, agendas to prosecute. But the president as a political head, I think will need some kind of coordination at the regional level. So I can see a regional minister being some kind of a small unit or regional ministry, be a small unit representing the president at the grassroots. And note that he will not have real authority over the municipal and district chief executives because they are elected. But then he would have the president's authority to coordinate certain things. Okay, so you end up not with him being there or not being there, but with a very small lean team representing the president.
I'm a little confused, Kofi. Franklin, if we elect our DCEs and we say we want to do that because we want the democracy to start at the community grassroots level, why then do I want the president to still continue to try and dictate policy down at that level? That's what I do. You see it any differently from the way Kofi is looking at it?
To the extent that, see, if only we still have the overbearing executive that we currently, where the executive tries to micromanage certain things, possibly the there's going to be a lot of
Sure.
where you have these regional ministers.
Okay, I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from. But Kofi, you need to expand a little on that.
Let me
we
explain.
can see what
you see, the president cannot be totally cut off from the district system. And the presidency we keep today, okay, has a responsibility across the country, even though you may elect DCEs and co. Okay, and you can't expect him to be directly dealing with the DCEs, on a daily, monthly, or whatever basis. So much as they are elected, if they become elected, there will still be some amount of work that, has to come from the center. And I think there will be the need to coordinate it. So you don't need a regional ministry like we have it now. Too big, too overbearing, too wasteful.
I agree with you on that point. Where I wanted you to clarify before Franklin comes in, because I think he might even have the same or maybe a slightly different view, is if I truly want to be democratic and I truly want to make it competitive at the district level, then I have to allow district autonomy to ride. And that district autonomy has got to go hand in hand with a complicated traditional system where traditional authorities are also very much involved in community relations and community development. So if that happens, we are actually taking control away from the center, which seems to be the thrust of what we are trying to say, that the center is too strong and too controlling, and therefore our districts are not growing the way we want them to.
Yes, but not entirely. The control will not entirely leave the center. For instance, education, we don't think it should be run from Accra. We think there should be devolution.
Education should be run at the community
level.
From
the district level.
Yes.
Okay, now, but you still have, for instance, an examination system, which will be a national examination system. You will still have a situation where I think the Ministry of Education may be a quarter of its size, but it still should have a way of funneling money down from the center to help students at the local level. I don't think it should go straight from the presidential or the ministerial level into the districts. So that gap for me is too wide. I think between the presidency and the district, there must be a political break point, which is what I call now the regional coordinating system. All right. So we don't need a regional minister if we can elect district and municipal chief executives, but we will need somebody who is the president's representative at the regional level to coordinate the national level things across the region. So for me, it's a structural issue. What we have now is too wasteful, too big, and overbearing. We should do away with it. This is a construct from Kwame Nkrumah's time, and its usefulness is far gone.
I agree with you.
But we also don't have the elections of the district level people. So you have a sense of need for them. Even now, I don't think the regional offices are worth how much we spend on them. But if we can get to the point to elect DCEs and MCEs, I will let go of the regional ministerial system, but I will keep a coordinator there to coordinate national level things. Take infrastructure, take education, take things like telecoms,
right?
Major infrastructure stuff, roads,
right.
Water, those things. You would have to have some kind of a regional break point, that will go into the district level.
Franklin.
Well, to that extent, I agree. At least, see, the whole idea of decentralization essentially is to give people the opportunity to, as it were, live their own lives. But again, you can't start an experiment and all of a sudden, in our case, it will be an experiment, really, if we are asking people to elect the DCs. Don't forget that one of the accusations that have come up against the elections of DCs is because of the partisan nature of our
politics.
So there's the fear that if a stronghold goes, opposition
counter to
exactly.
A political government.
I see the need for some amount of, if you like, some little control, not control as in checking the DC or anything, because in any case, if the DC doesn't perform, the idea is that he gets kicked out.
But isn't this similar to how the U.S. runs? That every state does its own thing, and then there's the federal component part that either comes to you because it's mandatory, it's statutory, it's legislated that you will get a certain portion of funding or you will get certain support depending on what it is. Isn't that the kind of system that we are talking about?
So that's where the state level is the regional ministry level, and then you have mayoral system, okay, which is sub the regional level. So you still have the governor, which in my case will be the regional coordinating minister, and then the DCs and MCs will be the mayoral levels. They have their levels of authority, okay, but the federal system stops at the state governorship level. You see that? It doesn't go down.
I think to some extent,
I still don't see the regional minister issue. I think I can save some money by cutting out the regional ministerial and not lose value.
I think it's a hybrid. Kofi is not calling for the elections of a regional minister, for instance.
That's out.
Essentially, these are, if you like, extensions of the castle or the Flagstaff House, ensuring maybe some district coordinating council, and then they are a major party, because if the state would still extend some amount of support in terms of defense or in terms of some monetary support to weaker districts, then there must be someone there to ensure that the mix is clear.
But we already have the funding thing in place. We have the split at the District Assembly Common Fund.
Well, so level. This is just a matter of beef in the tap anyway. Yeah. So that's what we need. I mean, so these regional ministers may not necessarily even be called regional ministers. They may be minders, I feel like. They're not interested in them. But that's the point. But this is crucial, you see, because if we didn't do that, we may end up giving a lot. We'll find out that the executive at the center will find very ingenious, even though they are disingenuous ways of coming back, clawing back the powers
at the opposition districts.
Not opposition. I'm just saying that whether opposition or not, well, maybe they could, because what they might do is to do a SADA, a VADA, a WADA, or a SADA. All these regions will start having. And not a JIDA. Because essentially what will happen is that if they feel that a particular district is becoming too powerful, say, okay, look, listen, we think you are doing well, but we need this authority to, as it will, help you. But that's where the whole concept of decentralization will start unraveling. I think it is important that aside having DCs elected, we need to ensure that they are given some broad plans. Maybe that's what
No, but should we give them broad plans?
No, broad ideas.
Don't we have PPPs to be done at district level? But that's the point. You see, it's like, was it just a syndicate here who said, if someone had been starved of meat for a very long time, he was given a bone, he asked for a hammer. So essentially what it is that, no, if you starve of bones, rather, and they give him meat, the person still has a hammer. The point is that we've been clamoring for this idea for a very long time. If we do not take care, people will take too much liberties, and then will start doing things on their own. By having a plan, and probably I hate to call it a plan or a scheme, because they end up becoming cash cows. What essentially we should do is some direction, some business direction, where we say, okay, for this district, these are the potentials. Would you mind being guided by this? Maybe it could be a take it or leave it affair. You expect that these districts' chief executives, once elected, can put up, good teams. Don't forget, there's also the downside to electing good people and smart people. There's a likelihood that idiots may be elected. I'm sorry, I have to use the word. Of course,
it's not because
it's possible.
It's not because people love them, but whether they have a plan, they have a clear plan, which is why you need that, if you like, that a little big brotherly role where you have for all these districts some sort of reference point. That look, this is where it was at this time.
Okay.
And I'm saying this because when we did some field level work in a district in the eastern region, and when the electoral cycle came and some of this district had to be, I call it gerrymandering, by the way, and what happened was that this DC lost 80% of its revenue source to another district. And instead of ensuring that the potential in the new district were brought to birth, he's rather scheming to become DC of the other districts that
so
has 80%.
He can move to where the money is.
Yeah, so these are the reasons why you need
some very radical views about all of this. I say we should be looking at moving towards a proportional representative system. I think we should have regionalism where we realign all the constituencies to a district so that you can have district control and district management. If you did that, then the mayor of the cities will become more influential, and they should have more authority to be able to raise revenue and spend according to an unallocated budget. But that's for another topic. I want us to talk about something really other major. And the thing for me is this. Aren't we not building too many roads? Shouldn't we be having more railway lines?
We are not building enough roads. It does not mean we should not have rail lines.
Okay.
I think we should prioritize our infrastructure in such a way that we do things concurrently. We've slacked so badly in the past 30 years that we don't have the luxury of doing this or that. There is no excuse why we don't have good enough railways in Ghana today. And there is also no excuse for having some of the laterite, paths that we have in Accra today, especially when you see how much money is floating around in different places.
Right.
Okay, so we should prioritize on infrastructure, figure out a way to finance it. And we've come up with all kinds of schemes that we think really make sense. For instance, if you take area roads, what we call area roads and systems, so gutters and that kind of thing, our view, something we are toying with at Imani, is that we don't pay property rates in Ghana. And frankly speaking, it's because nobody sees the services coming.
We don't pay, you mean adequate property rates, or we don't pay property rates at all?
We don't pay property rates.
Because I get a property bill.
Well, you get a property bill. I'm not going to ask whether you've paid or not.
I haven't paid.
Yes.
Because the guy came and he wanted cash.
Don't
I refused to pay
yourself.
Cash. I refused to pay cash.
Good.
I gave him a check. He said they don't take checks. So I said to him that then they should come and arrest me because
most people don't pay because you don't know what that money is going to go to.
Absolutely. You have a point.
Number two, we've seen some of those bills. They are woefully inadequate considering the value of the property. Our view is that take West Legon, take the Dansoman area, take Sakumono, okay? Have a situation where the property rates are properly assessed and they pay it into an account that is managed by the area people themselves, whether it's area committee or whatever it is.
You mean the municipality?
That's big. I say take Dansoman. Take West Lagos.
So Dansoma will manage its own.
Dansoma should elect. They have Keep Fit. They have all kinds of area groups, including watchdog committees. I'm saying have the area have its own system. Let it levy its property rates appropriately, but then 70% of that money is retained within the community to construct gutters and roads and other things as much as possible. 30% can go to a central place. My point is, then certain small things can be done. And those ones do not now become a burden for central government.
A bit radical.
To the extent.
Frankly,
it is the radical view.
The
reason why
it's radical, and the reason why I'm on that
road is essentially because
you're also on that road.
On the road, if we got our DCs and MCs elected, and then they were not given the pot of money they are given right now from the center, they'll start thinking. Because I don't see why we should essentially be supporting laziness, because some of the MCs and DCs are not innovative at all, and I'm surprised that property rates.
But don't you think you're opening up a huge nightmare of who is going to monitor and evaluate these people? Who's going to audit them?
Let me explain. But town planning says that you have a certain model for a certain level of gutter.
Yes.
So there are, the planners will tell you there are levels, there are storm drains, the gutter in front of your house, that kind of thing. So you don't just get up and do anything. The plans are there, centrally done. But the point is, instead of asking me every Saturday to wake up and clean a gutter in front of my house, everybody now digs his gutter. Everybody has their own way of doing it, and they are not, uniform. You have a standard design. But the point is, there is money and there is coordination within the area. Let me again use this area of West Legon. The people of West Legon, okay, if you take it from that filling station where forget, West Lagos, they are capable by their property raise of having all their gutters done.
Rehabilitating and doing everything themselves.
Right? And organizing themselves to have it clean and everything. And then the major storm systems can be done. That is a matter of just letting them know these are the plans, etc. Instead of waiting for AME or whoever to come and do it.
So what we are saying is you can take a district, and within that district you can have your local areas.
Yes.
And each local area can be coordinated in such a way that it will carry on its own program to try and gentrify its area and beautify itself and make sure that its bypass lanes and its roads and everything are done properly. And that needs a certain amount of management and
the area groups are there, and they will
that.
put dissuasion on each other. They will gladly pay their property rates. Because I know my property rate is going to construct a gutter in front of my house.
So will these area leaders be paid, or is going to be a community service?
Really, they can do it for free. But my point is, if they are going to be paid, it's going to be paid from the same amount of money. And the point I'm making is that
I think
there is enough money within that system.
That the monies collected will be handled by some official of, let's say, AME or something
which
like
is
that.
what I'm saying
should never happen. I mean,
the area
otherwise
should pick its own leaders who they can elect and remove at certain intervals
and
that they
that will be the
determine.
beginning of community
leadership.
People become
It sounds a bit
of the system.
anarchical, isn't
It's
it?
not.
It's more
That's the
organized
only way.
than what we have now is anarchical. You have a situation where I don't know who is the assemblyman in my area. And I really don't care because I don't see him. He doesn't do anything for me.
Because I was going to say, what you're talking about is really assemblyman, assemblywoman,
whatever you call it. So that's why I'm saying that if it's assemblyman, and I know I'm paying property rates to him.
People that are say elected, maybe we become passive when these elections are held. But to be frank with you, I've seen a couple of them and they don't inspire. So the point really is that, look, this thing should be taken up by people who really want the good of their own communities.
Thank you so much. And that's where we have to hold off. And that's where we would be short all the time. Because whenever we get into these discussions and as things get more and more exciting and interesting, you find that you have run out of time. We wanted to talk about the railway line systems that we should put in place. We wanted to talk about the lake transport systems that we could have. We needed to talk about telecommunication and all kinds of areas that we think most of things can be done. So, viewers, thank you for watching. We appreciate your time. We would like an opportunity to talk to you again at some point, and we hope we can do so soon. My name is Sidney Casely Hayford. I've been talking to the team from Imani, Kofi Bentel, and Franklin Kuju. And for all of us, thank you very much. Hopefully we'll see you again.